Welcome everyone to my presentation about calling RESTful services the reactive way with Helidon. My name is Kral and I worked for Oracle as a Java developer. And on the main screen, you can currently see my email address, and you can use this email address to send me a question if you will have any later when this presentation actually ends. All right, so this is some safe harbor statement. We can actually skip that. And we are getting to an actual agenda of this presentation. Well, at the beginning, I will explain what it is actually Helidon, for those who actually don't know. Then we'll move to some Helidon structure, and then we will talk about the reactive HTTP client itself, which we'll be using in demo today. Yeah, and then I will run the demo. If I may ask you to leave the questions, if you'll have any, until the end of the presentation, there will be place there for those. So if I can ask that. All right. So let's begin. So what is the Helidon? Well, Helidon itself is a set of Java libraries for developing microservices. That's actually what Helidon is. That's the definition of it, right? So let's move on. And the Helidon structure. As you can see, Helidon itself is based on Netty, right? And Helidon itself consists from two parts. One part is Helidon reactive, also known as Helidon SE, and Helidon microprofile, which is also known as Helidon MP. Helidon SE is programmed in a reactive way and doesn't contain any magical frameworks like dependency injections and stuff around that. It just contains only the necessary stuff, so you basically have to do everything yourself. It actually provides unique developing feeling, if you want to say it this way, which is based on the builder pattern. So you will be building everything via builder patterns and use it the reactive way. Then there is Helidon microprofile, which actually contains all the microprofile implementations. If I remember correctly, current version of microprofile supported is 3.3. And then there are some Jakarta EE specification implementations. All right, so this presentation itself is not about Helidon, so I'll move along, and I will focus mainly on the HTTP client of the Helidon. So we call that the web client. The web client is part of the Helidon reactive, and it's, well, obviously the reactive HTTP client. It uses builder-like pattern for its own creation. As I've mentioned before, you are using their builder patterns for more or less everything. And then also for the execution of the request itself. And yeah, well, it's based on Netty, so it's fast. All right. And now the demo itself, because I believe that's what actually this presentation is about, right? What we are going to create today and what we are going to be doing on that demo. I have created before some MP Quick Start. That's the project which we use as some introduction to our microprofile, Helidon microprofile part. The reason why I actually chose to use MP instead of SE when in fact the web client itself is from SE part is that most of you will be familiar with some JAX-RS resources, and actually this MP Quick Starts contains those. So I have decided to use that for your better understanding or easier understanding what actually we are doing. Then I will move to the other project I have created because that quick start we will just start that. I will show you those endpoints which we will be using, and then we will move out of it. We will not use it anymore. We will just start it and leave it running. All right, so project and I will show you the project with web client itself. That's the project where we will be working. And after the introduction of the projects, I will actually move to the live coding itself. Right. Okay, so let me just jump out of the presentation. And now you should see on your screens, hopefully, because I don't see it. Oh, never mind. Now you should see the MP part, the MP quick start I have told you about before. All right, so this is the resource which we will be actually using, right? And as you can see, this is some resource which will be on path greet. All right, so I guess nothing too interesting here. Let's move along. And as you can see, there is some default endpoint which we'll be using. It actually returns some JSON object, and this JSON object will contain just a greeting like "Hello world." That's the whole point of it. Then I will move to. Then there is another endpoint which actually accepts path parameter, which specifies some concrete name which will be used on this greeting, right? So, for example, "Hello, David." And then there is an endpoint which will be used for demonstration of redirects. So the whole purpose of this endpoint is just to return some redirection, some code 307, and this will redirect our client, or we will demonstrate how to redirect our client to the default endpoint. All right. Then there is another endpoint which is called user agent. This or a header if you are taking the path. This will be used just to verify which header has actually been set to the request. Okay, so nothing too hard here. And all of those endpoints above were for GET requests because, well, that's like basic, right? And other than that, we will also demonstrate a PUT request. I will show you how to actually change the greeting itself, because sometimes you want to submit some data, right? Or sometimes, often, you want to submit some data. So we will also demonstrate how to do that. All right, so that's basically it. That's basically about the quick start MP and about the endpoints which we are using. And I guess we can actually start it and move on. All right, so I will start our quick start. Now the server is running. As you can see, it's running on 8080 on the local host. And actually, we will not take care of it anymore. And now I will switch to the test project, which we will be working on the whole time. As you can see, the only thing which I have actually added here is dependency to web client. Nothing else. That's it. That's all you need. And the version of the web client is 2.1.0. That's the latest Helidon version. Okay, so yeah, now I have my workspace ready. I can open the main class, well, creatively named, right? And I will go into the main method here because I need to have something which I'll be able to execute. Here, we will create our first web client. All right, so how to do that? Well, basically, we'll just create a variable here, which will be called, for example, web client, right? And let's say we want to create a new web client, but the web client itself is an interface. So, all right, we will take a look into that interface. and we'll find out that there is method create. I guess that's the most suitable one for us currently, but we might also want to use other one. There is also method create, which accepts config. This config is actually config which is used in Helidon, Helidon reactive. And so for those who are familiar with the framework, you will know actually how to get it, how to use it. I will not actually describe those. That's easy, very easy to find out because we have very well written documentation. So yeah. But some of you might not want to actually create some configuration to the file, right? You might want to actually do it directly. So we can actually use builder. This would be basically the same stuff what create does, because, well, it's just shortcut method. But other than that, as you can see, builder offers a lot of different methods, which allows us to set different behavior to our web client, right? I promise that we will get back to it. I just wanted to show you that it's there and that the possibility is there. We will use it today, but for now, we will use just the method create, okay? So let's get back to the create and now to the actual execution, because we have talked a lot and we have done nothing yet. All right, so we'll say web client. Then we have to select the correct method we want to use. So let's say we want to call our default endpoint on that greet service, right? So let's select get. That's self-explanatory, I guess. And then you just have to say the web client where to point to. So we will create some URI. All right, so let's put it like this: HTTP, and it's localhost. And if you remember, it was running at port 8080. And at the beginning, I pointed out that this resource is actually called greet. So we have to do it also like this. All right, so now we have more or less everything set up. And now we can actually call method request. Method request actually fires the request itself, and it contacts the endpoint, right? Nothing too fancy there. It's just method which fires the request itself. All right. What it actually returns, to be nice to know, it returns single, and the single will contain web client response. All right, so actually, what is single in this case? Well, single in this case is a hybrid between, in our case, that's Helidon implementation, in fact. So it's a hybrid implementation between completion stage and reactive operators we have, right? So let's take a look. Now I can see that all those methods I can use. And for my usage now, because I will just want to take a look actually what I got, right? So I will use method for single. And let's call it response. And here we can take a look to the response itself. What does it contain? Well, it contains, it has a method content that's unhandled entity or payload of the response, because we haven't said anything about how it should be handled, right? Currently is waiting there for us to decide. And there are also headers of the response. There's also status and stuff like that. But in most cases, I do believe that the status and stuff around that is actually not something you need to verify, possibly in tests maybe, but I guess that you are not focusing on the status which you got. All right, so in that case, we can just say that we want the payload or the entity, if you will, to handle it as a string, right? So now we can say that this value which we are getting here is actually a string because web client has handled it for us, and we can say I don't know, response, or even we do not have to do that. We do not have to name it at all, since we just want to print it out, right? So we can just type system out and print line, and that's it. This is actual execution to the endpoint here. All right, so let's run it. Right, and nothing happened. Why is that so? Well, actually, it verifies that this web client is a reactive. And this is the problem here because we are in a main method, and this method ended up before we actually got any response. So nothing has been printed out, and because of that, we have to add method which is called await. This method will actually turn this this reactive approach to synchronous. So this will wait for the response to arrive and all the depending parts to be executed. All right. You do not have to actually do this in your code, for example, when you use it somewhere on your in your service or something. We just have to do this here in our presentation because otherwise we wouldn't get any output. So yeah, that's why we have to add this here. And now I will execute it again. And as you can see, I got the message hello world, hello world, as I've expected, because we are calling the default greet, right? And that was actually returning the hello world. All right, so let's call, for example, the one which accepts the path parameter, right? I will write there David, and I will let the service greet me. Right, sweet. So as you can see, the different endpoint was actually called. Great. But in many cases, you just do not want to work with the response as a string, right? You want to use some concrete object which you want to actually work with. And to that, I will use today here JSON object from JSON-P. You could actually use, for example, our support for JSON or JSON, or sorry, JSON-B or stuff like that, which would actually help you to get your desired object out of it. But for our demonstration, we will use just JSON-P. Okay, so let's say I want my response to be handled as JSON object. Well, currently it's not on our class path, right? So we have to edit there. I have the dependency prepared here. I will just uncomment it, and now it should be resolvable. Right, great, it is. Okay, so I will try to run it again and see what happens. And actually we got an exception. All right, so let's find out what's wrong here. No reader found. All right, that actually means that web client wasn't sure how to read the response because the support for JSON-P objects or JSON-P types is not there by default, and we have to edit by ourselves. The same stuff would be in case of JCON or any other extended support which we are providing. All right, so and how to do that? Well, we can do it over the builder. That's actually why I mentioned that. So let's create this structure, right? And now actually change something in the builder. So we will say add media support, and the media support is actually called, in our case, JSON P support. And let's just say create. We do not have to do anything else. This will register support for JSON P, and now this will be actually resolvable as expected. All right, so let's try that. As you can see, I got the message. Actually, I got the message the same way, looking the same way as before, and that's because of this. We are printing out to the console the object which was handled, so the message to object to string has been executed, and it produced the same output as before, right? Okay. So now we have tested how to add some extended support and how to actually get something else than just basic string, because, well, yeah, you will want to use with something else, or you want to work with something else, definitely. Okay. Now we actually can test the put method. Why not, right? And to that, we will have to actually create a new JSON object, because the JSON object is something which this method or this endpoint accepts, right? So I will say JSON, that's JSON P, and I will say create object builder. I will add build method right away because I like to do it this way. And I will add an actual value to the JSON object, and this will be greeting, and the value of the greeting will be, I don't know, for example, yo, because we want to have a very cool server. And now we actually have our object created, right? So we can just store it in our in some new variable here, and now let's call the endpoint. Okay, so web client put, because now we are contacting put endpoint, and we will say again some URI. I will just copy these because I do not want to write again. And this time, instead of request, I will call method submit, because submit is actually submitting something. So we are sending something, right? And in my case, it will be JSON object. Great. And submit also accepts another parameter, but that's optional. That's up to us. But that's the same stuff as in case of request, how basically the response should be handled. In our case, I know that we are returning no content, so it's pointless to have some special return type there. We can actually do it like this. All right. And now let's say when we have executed the request, right, we want to actually even verify that this greeting has been changed. And we have to do it by executing another request when the previous one has been completed. So, well, we might do something like wait here or something like that, but it's not very nice, is it? So let's do it this way. Let's just write here flat map. Why not, right? And execute a GET request. And I will just comment this out, or you know what, I will write it there like this. And I can, well, I can do it as a JSON object again. That's fine, I guess. Okay. Let's just write here, write it like this. Okay. And we also, after this request is completed, we want to actually do the same stuff as we did before. So we want to print it out again. So we can say for each, because flat map returns multi, that's another reactive operator we have here. And well, let's just say print out. It will contain only single element anyway. And then await again. All right, so I guess this is more elegant way than have like two requests, one right after another, right? But this is actually still not very nice because we are duplicating the URIs here. And well, imagine the situation that you have to do it on like 100 places in your application, and on all the places you have to specify this base URI. That's something you actually do not want to do, right? We can use a method here, which is called base URI, and that's directly on web client. And there we can actually specify the whole URI which will be used as a base. All other, everything else which will be added to method path here, to the request, will be just extending this path. If you will use URI again on the request, you will replace the base URI. So keep that in mind. And now let's just write here a greeting, since that's the endpoint which actually, that's the put endpoint which changes the greeting. And let's change this to path again and write it as only David, since we are contacting only the specific one which should return the JSON with the special naming there, right? Okay, so we can try it and see what happens. And as you can see, we got a JSON back. That means that this first request, this put request we have created here, has finished. Then it moved here to the flat map, executed this message, this request for the JSON, and then it was printed out. And that's it. It's that easy to actually do some requests, do a request chaining with the web client from the Helidon. Okay. And let's say some of you, or well, actually it's a very common use case that you want to follow redirects, right? Because when you get, for example, 307 response status, you actually want to execute another request to the new place because you want this to proceed. You do not want to do it yourself. That's not something you actually want to do, right? So we can call, we will just comment this out because it's something we do actually not need right now. So I'll copy this and paste it here. And now I will contact only the redirect. All right, so redirect endpoint, which I know that redirect, right? Which I know that it returns some redirection code. And let's say I wouldn't know it, and I want to actually handle the response as a JSON object. That's fine, because as a JSON object will be handled the last place where I was already redirected, not the previous ones. So we can actually do it like this. Okay, so execute this. And we are getting 307 because from as a base, as a default, we are not actually allowing follow redirects. So we have to add it to our builder again. So we can say follow redirects and true, right? Now, when we execute it, it will actually print out the message from the default endpoint. That's something I've mentioned at the beginning. The redirect endpoint redirects us to the default one, right? And as you can see, we have been following redirects. You might be asking how many redirections we will follow. Well, actually, that's up to you. You can change that in your configuration, but by default, we are following 5 redirects. We were thinking that's the reasonable number there. All right. You also can enable following redirects just on your specific request. You do not want to do it, let's say, on all of your requests, only on specific ones, or on the other hand, disable it on your specific ones. So you can do it on the request, and let's disable it here in this request, and this should actually fail because we are not following any redirects here. All right, so this is how you can customize the stuff with our builder. Okay, and now I will show you one last thing here, and that's actually how easy it is to set a headers to an actual request. All right, so I will change the target here to header, and I will want to have just string, since I know that it just returning string, nothing fancy there. And as you can see, I was testing it against the header user agent. Which header you would choose, that's up to you. I was thinking that the user agent would be nice. So this is some default value which we set in Helidon if you haven't specified your own agent you want to be, basically. And all right, so there are 2 ways, or 3 ways actually, how to set your user agent. Currently at builder of web client, there is a handy method user agent. So you can actually say that your agent should be called like builder, right? Agent. Okay, just for us to recognize where this came from. All right, so now when I will execute this, it actually executed to the server different agent. So the header actually has been changed, right? And again, you can override it at your request. But this time, we are not providing here any helpful method, since you are having here the method headers. Method headers actually provides you all the headers which has been currently registered. And you can do here is headers. And let me just switch it to multi-line. Right. And we can just do headers and right, user agent, and let's call this, for example, request agent. Just like that. And now we have to actually return headers. All right. And when we will execute this here you can actually verify that the lowest registered user agent has actually been used, and that's how headers here works. We are providing also several different methods for you to help with, for example, setting at accept, because we know that this is something really commonly used. And I do believe, yeah, it's also on the builder of the request itself, accept method, right? Because that's something which is really commonly used. We know that you guys want to set these stuff. So that's actually why we added those. And also there are helpful methods for some specific headers which require to have some specific format. Like, for example, if modified since, right, because it does return some zone date time and stuff like that. So we are actually providing you here the way how to set the stuff there, right? So it should be relatively easy to work with web client, since you have all the helpful stuff here. All right, so this was actually about how to propagate the headers. I've shown you the following redirects. One might ask if we have something like keep alive, because, well, keep alive is very important, right? Well, we do. As you can see, we have a keep alive support. So by default, all of the requests are actually closing after the request. So we are not keeping the connection. But if you will select keep alive, well, then the new connection will be created only at time when all the connections to the specific endpoint, to the specific server is actually taken, right? So other than that, the connection will be reused. If the connection hangs too long, it will actually be automatically closed. So you do not have to worry about keeping that the connection will be there forever or something. All right. Okay, and as far as I can see, we are getting out of the time for the presentation itself. So let me just quickly get back to the presentation here. Okay, so I have a question here. How can the request be executed in parallel? Is that possible in a builder chain directly, or would it have to wrap each web call in async completable futures? Well, in our case, if you want to do several executions in parallel, you can actually do it one after another, since, well, you are executing them all because you are not waiting for the previous one to return, right? But I do not think here that it's possible to do it in chain easy, since it's actually waiting for the previous call to be called. And I have to, and I think you would have to wrap those in completable futures, yeah. I mean, something like in Spring creating reactive monos, the merging them after in parallel with monozip. Right. Actually, hang on, I have to turn it off again. What you can do, and I'm not exactly sure if I'm getting you correctly here, but you can actually do here. You can execute the request, right? You can save. Not this. You can save the single somewhere if that's what you are referring to, and then you can actually say join at some point and wait for all the requests to finish. Is that what you are trying to add here? Ah, great. Yeah, that's actually what you can do. I thank you very much for coming here and listening to my presentation. Right, so thank you. Goodbye.